president in Georgia campaigning for the Senate candidates down there. Also with the Wisconsin legislatures to hold hearings on election integrity this week, debates over vaccines and stimulus bills. We're going to get to all of that and much more. But in the meantime, I want to bring in a man who's been making waves all over TV and the internet, Congressman Mo Brooks from the state of Alabama. Good morning, Congressman.
Good morning.
So, Congressman, we've written about you here at Just the News also. You have said you intend to challenge the Electoral College on January 6th. Why are you doing this?
Well, in my judgment, if you look at the overall picture, if you look at all the evidence, the result is one conclusion. Donald Trump won the Electoral College if only lawful votes cast by eligible American citizens is counted. Again, the evidence is overwhelming and compelling in my judgment, and I can go into some of the systemic flaws with our election system that caused me to reach that result. I can also go into the law. Many people don't realize it. While the courts have a role in this process, in the United States Constitution, Article 1, Article 2, and the 12th Amendment, it is the United States Congress that is the final judge and jury, the final arbiter of election contests for the House, for the Senate, and for the President of the United States. So it's going to be my job as a judge and as a juror to make up my own mind as to whether this election was so badly flawed with voter fraud and election theft as to justify Joe Biden being sworn in as President of the United States on January the 20th. And in my judgment, it is so badly flawed that Joe Biden did not win if you count only the lawful votes cast by eligible American citizens.
Now, earlier this morning on NPR News, there was an anchor who accused the president of trying to, quote, subvert the election and subvert the election results. I hear you quoting the Constitution. I hear you quoting articles within the Constitution, and we see the president and his team going to court using legal means to make these challenges. So when you hear folks in the media using words like subvert, what's your reaction to that?
That they haven't a clue what they're talking about, that they're being very partisan. It is our job and duty to subvert voter fraud and election theft. Doing that means that we get an honest election that respects the will of American citizens who are eligible to vote.
And Congressman, I want to pull out something that I noted on Twitter from the article that I looked at in my analysis. And I pointed out that there are Democrats who are saying what you're doing. They're complaining about it. But they're leaving out the fact that Democrats did the exact same thing that you say you're planning to do. And they did it in 2001, 2005, and 2017. This seems to be just another example of some hypocrisy from Democrats. Why do you think Democrats have amnesia at this point?
Well, having dealt with Democrats now for almost 4 decades in one elected office or another, I've noted one consistent pattern. They have a lust for political power. They put their own elevation above the elevation of their cities, their counties, their states, or the United States of America. And so no one should be surprised if, once again, they're involved in hypocrisy or dishonesty as they try to accumulate that political power. Now, keep in mind something about who they are now. They are socialists. And if you look at the history of socialism, whether it be socialism imposed in Germany or in Soviet Union or in communist China, in the quest for political power, they were more than willing to murder tens of millions of freedom-loving citizens. Why? Because freedom and liberty are the antithesis of socialism. Socialism is dictatorial power. And if socialists, with their drive and quest for political power, are willing to exterminate, kill their opposition, why should anyone be surprised that they would be involved in a little bit of hypocrisy or voter fraud or election theft to achieve those same goals and ends in the United States of America?
And Congressman, you're going to have to work to get your colleagues on board. But I did want to note, we have a tweet from Tom Fitton over at Judicial Watch, who has endorsed the same thing. He said he's asking people to call their senators and congressmen if they will object to any electoral college certification. He gives the phone number there. And so he seems to be on board. In terms of what he's saying, are you seeing other people outside Congress who are pressuring their members?
I would hope that the phrase would be persuading. I don't want to see any kind of pressure that may be inappropriate. But let's face it, Our republic is at stake. The very bedrock of a republic is an election system that people can trust to be honest, to give an accurate count of people who are eligible to vote, i.e. American citizens. And I'll give you one example of just one systemic problem. Now, I'm not talking about these little lawsuits all over the country. Don't get me wrong, they're important, and they do divulge some important information. But they're not going to add up to the kind of systemic numbers, systemic fraud, systemic theft that we need in order to justify the belief that I hold that Donald Trump, if you only count eligible American citizens' lawful votes, won the Electoral College. Go back to 1993 with the National Voter Registration Act. That act, Section 5, makes it illegal for voter registrars to insist on proof of citizenship from illegal aliens and non-citizens when they seek to vote. Now, you would think that we would only want American citizens voting in American elections. And you would think that we would have a system in place that would make it easier, not harder, to discern who is a non-citizen, who is an illegal alien, in order to prevent them from getting that voter registration card. But in 1993, the Democrats jammed through the House and the Senate and the White House legislation that made it illegal for our guards at the gate, our voter registrars, to stop illegal aliens and non-citizens from registering to vote, because the Democrats stripped them of the information that they need to discern who is an illegal alien and a non-citizen. Now, fast forward to October 22nd of 2020. Joe Biden, he knows there's a huge block vote out there of illegal aliens and other non-citizens, okay? He knows that. And so what does he do on national TV in Nashville, Tennessee, during that October 22nd presidential debate? He promises illegal aliens that if you'll vote for me, I will give all of you a path to citizenship. I will give you amnesty. Now, he didn't do that just by accident. He did that as a calculated way to encourage illegal aliens not only to illegally register to vote, but also to illegally cast that vote for Joe Biden. And that in and of itself is probably the difference maker in this election.
Well,
so
it's interesting. We've actually reported that here at Just the News, that upwards of 10% of people who cannot vote say they did vote. So, Congressman, stay with us. We'll be right back.
Yes, ma'am.
and welcome back to Just the News AM. I'm Carrie Sheffield here, also with Congressman Mo Brooks. We are talking about his plans to challenge the Electoral College. Congressman, I want to play some sound down in Georgia. Your colleague, Representative Biggs from Arizona, was down there. Let's take a listen.
We have to do too.
Stop the steal.
Yeah.
How is Congress
going to stop the steal?
Yeah, how are we going to vote on a system that is already corrupt and going to steal it from us again?
I'm going to tell you right now.
Paper ballots is what we need.
Paper ballots are.
Yes. And we need to push Congress to tell Governor Kemp for a special election so that we can pull it together and we can actually stop this steal. We can all go and we can vote, but it's not going to do a damn bit of good if we don't take it back.
And then there was also reports that we've been reporting at Just the News that the president has called for broad reforms, including voter identification, and also just making sure that there are, only lawfully registered voters who are voted. But my question is this all too little too late? Because you could say, and we were talking before the break about illegal immigrants or people who even are here with green cards but should not vote because they're not U.S. citizens. Is this all too little too late, Congressman?
Well, that's going to be up to the American people. And by the way, I'm proud as can be about the patriotism that was just displayed by Americans who are upset and are willing to fight for their republic. Those are tremendous citizens and individuals. And quite frankly, right now, America needs more patriots like that care and are willing to become involved and are willing to fight. Now, is it too little too late? If the American people get behind an effort to have a fair and honest election system, then no, it's not too little and it's not too late. Because on January the 6th, the United States Congress has the power to reject any state submission of its Electoral College totals to the United States Congress. And that's one of the things I'm going to be pushing. I do not believe that the vote count as reported by officials in Pennsylvania, Georgia, or Nevada are honest and accurate. And as such, at a minimum, we ought to reject the vote counts from those three states and any other state that we believe has such a badly flawed election system as to render their vote counts unworthy of trust.
Now, we saw the Supreme Court weigh in on the Electoral College certification in Pennsylvania, and that deadline is coming up. The electors are supposed to vote on December 14th. And I spoke to some legal scholars, and they said the claim on the 12th Amendment, which is the contingent election that would give the delegations each state one vote, and there are more Republican delegations than Democrat delegations in the 50 states, so Republicans would win in that scenario. However, they've been telling me that that scenario would only play out if before December 14th that the electors, that it's challenged there, that your challenge wouldn't match up what the contingent election outlines under the 12th Amendment. What's your response to that?
Oh, I respectfully disagree. We're talking apples and oranges. Under the 12th Amendment in particular, that's where you elect a new president based on no candidate for president receiving a majority of the Electoral College votes. While it's similar to, it's also different than the process by which we reject Electoral College votes of states on January the 6th. That's the reporting date. And there have been times in the past where we've had these kind of contests. By way of example, in 1876, Rutherford B. Hayes, Republican, led by one vote in the Electoral College, but that one vote was a majority. However, there were contests to the vote count submitted by Florida, South Carolina, and Louisiana because they all voted Republican for Rutherford B. Hayes. Now, if you know your history, you know Republicans really weren't well received in the South after the Civil War, after the invasion, after the destruction to the Southern economy. And it's implausible that South Carolina, Florida, or Louisiana would submit a Republican delegation to the Electoral College on behalf of Rutherford B. Hayes. So there was a contest. Ultimately, Congress decided to appoint a commission. Half of the members of the commission were from each party with one tiebreaker who, as it turned out, later became a Republican. They submitted a report to the United States Congress. There was still a big battle going on. The Senate was one party and the House was a different party. And a compromise was reached, and this was the compromise. Rutherford B. Hayes, we will not strip you of those Electoral College votes from South Carolina, Florida, and Louisiana if you will agree to end the northern occupation of the southern states. That ended Reconstruction, and Rutherford B. Hayes became President of the United States.
Congressman,
so this
do you
is
think
not
there's
novel.
do you think there's a comparable compromise? You were talking about the withdrawal of troops. There is some chips on the table for this deal to be made. Do you think there's a similar sort of deal that could be made?
Well, there are two big aspects to all this. Number one is who's President of the United States, but number two, are we going to fix the systemic flaws in our election system? It might be that a compromise could be reached on fixing the systemic flaws in our election system that have empowered and allowed the Socialist Democrats to steal this election from the American people. That might be a compromise that some people would be worth entering into. I don't know. This is the first time a compromise has been mentioned, is in this kind of discussion that we're having right now. I don't know what the stand would be, but as for me, I want to fix the election system, and I want to make sure that the individual who got a majority of the lawful votes cast by eligible American citizens, as reflected in the Electoral College count, is the person who's sworn in as president on January 20th, and that individual is Donald Trump.
Now, the Wall Street Journal reported about a congressional race in Iowa where it seems that the Democrat challenger is poised to challenge the Republican. Now, the Republican won by just a few votes. Mariannette Miller Meeks is the Republican, and it appears that her Democratic opponent, Rita Hart, is going to use a 1969 federal statute to have the U.S. House of Representatives pick the winner. Do you think that this is going to work? And what's your response in terms of, again, the Democrats who say what you're doing is trying to subvert democracy?
Well, again, it's hypocrisy on the part of the Democrats, but what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And let's be clear, it is Article 1, Section 5 of the United States Constitution that makes the House of Representatives the supreme and final judge and jury of who wins contested House races. So that Iowa case that you just mentioned, Lisa Hart, she's the Democrat who lost, according to the Iowa elected officials. She has filed an election contest with the House of Representatives, and we are going to be the ones that decide who won. Lisa Hart, the Democrat, or Miller Meeks, who, according to the elected officials in Iowa, won a majority of the votes. I hope we will respect Iowa's certification. The other side, the Socialist Democrats, they're going to have to come up with some compelling evidence that the results err before they vote, I hope before they vote, to install one of their own as a Democrat congresswoman, even though, according to the vote counters, she lost.
So, but in terms of the election results in this state, so this is a state that certified, an outcome here in the House race that you agree with, so you respect that vote. What would you say to critics who say, well, so it seems like you only want to certify and keep votes that you agree with, and everywhere else there's fraud?
I had a caveat. Lisa Hart should not win unless they come forth with compelling and overwhelming evidence that she, in fact, won a majority of the votes cast by lawful and eligible American voters. If you apply that same standard to the presidential race, I believe that the evidence is compelling, the evidence is overwhelming that Donald Trump won the Electoral College if only lawful votes are counted.
All right, Congressman, we appreciate it. Thank you for giving us your perspective.
My pleasure.
And stay with us. We have our breaking news editor, Joe Weber, to give us all the latest headlines. Don't go away. morning and welcome back to Just the News AM. I'm Carrie Sheffield and glad you're here. Joining me is Joe Weber, our news editor here for Just the News. Good morning, Joe. So let's talk about first the spending bill, the status of this $900 billion package that was been promoted as a compromise. What's the status of this? Do you think we're going to see it get through?
I'm optimistic, but I wouldn't bet on it, as they say. This has been going on since mid-May, when the Democrat-controlled House, proposed their bill. And then they suggested that, the reason it didn't get passed because it was all partisan and electoral, year politics. But now, after the election's over, they still seem to be stuck in a rut. I mean, you take a look at, there was an effort, we thought last week, with bipartisan effort that would really sort of put this thing out of the realm of House-controlled Democrats and GOP-controlled Senate. But it doesn't seem to be anywhere closer to resolution than it was, 6 months ago.
And what about sort of the skinny bill? So there was a bill that Mitch McConnell has said he wants, which would be slightly more than half of this amount, about $500 billion. And it was money that was left over from the CARES package and some other funding that would be rolled over. And so it would already be paid for. So the Wall Street Journal said they basically endorsed this. And they said this is, imagine this, a bill that's already paid for. What's the status of that one?
They did. Well, again, I think that what it appears as if is this whole idea, this bipartisan, no labels group that have put forth this, bill, that seems to be out of their hands now. We take a look at the shift of power where McConnell wasn't even involved in the negotiations and it was just Mnuchin. But now that it appears as if, he won't be the treasurer in the next couple of months, the power has shifted back to McConnell. So it very well could be that that's the package that we're going to see because he seems to be more in control of this negotiation now.
And let's turn to Georgia. So there has been, we just reported that in Georgia, they're looking into 250 open election integrity cases, according to the State Bureau of Investigation. They're going to be looking into this. And then you also have the debate on stage where you have the two Senate candidates who were heading off, Loeffler and Warnock. And it seemed that this was a hot button issue that Kelly Loeffler didn't want to touch. What was your read on the debate? Who do you think won?
I think that it was an interesting debate. They both did a very good job. I think, this idea that Loeffler ducked it. She just simply continued to say that, I can't really say. I mean, until we take a look at this, all the reports of inaccuracies or potential voter fraud, and until that's completely vetted, then, who am I to say whether this was a fair election or the president has won or lost? Let's just get through the process. So I think that was a pretty solid answer. She stayed on message. What fascinated me about that debate was that both of the candidates were posed the question, would you agree to the stimulus package that's out there now, which is about $900 billion? And both punted. That just goes to show you how politically fraught deciding on this answer is. Mm-hmm. Nor would neither pose what they think was a good idea for a stimulus package.
Now let's move over to another topic, the Department of Health and Human Services. So Joe Biden has named who he wants to have in the role heading that up. He had been a former congressman who helped push through Xavier Becerra. What's your read on him and what he might do at HHS?
Well, as everyone knows, he was an important part of Nancy Pelosi's leadership group in the House-controlled, Democrat-controlled House. He is now appears as if going to be replace Alex Azar. As everyone knows, he led an effort by attorneys generals across the country to keep Obamacare intact, particularly the public option. So you can likely expect, if he gets through the nomination, that he will be a strong advocate for keeping Obamacare in place.
And what about Secretary Azar? Because he made some comments on the vaccine. Tell us about those. I know we've been covering this. Health
and Human Services really in the news here over the last, 48 hours. Azar, this is said yesterday, responded to Joe Biden's accusation that there's no plan to distribute the vaccine as quote unquote nonsense. He was back today talking more about it. He said that there's 40 million vaccines ready to go and about 20 more million in the waiting. And he expects more. You take a look, it's probably going to be Pfizer will be the first to go, then Moderna. But he also pointed out that AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson have additional ones coming out. He said that anyone who, by the second quarter of next year, any American who wants a coronavirus vaccine will have access to one. And that is where it stands right now.
Mm-hmm. And let's turn to Wisconsin, because we have been reporting it there as well that the legislature is planning to hold a hearing on election irregularities. Do you think there's going to be any change to the outcome?
Well, first of all, just a little bit of background on this. This is a committee on elections, and they are going to hear it. State Senator Ron Tussler, as you have up there on the screen, has said that he's received thousands of complaints about balloting that does not appear to be the irregularities in balloting. It still remains to be seen. They were waiting for the state Supreme Court to get through this. It's ultimately got to get to the courts. It's got to get to the Supreme Court. Time's running out for the Electoral College to certify this. President Trump had said a couple of weeks ago that it's very hard to get this to the Supreme Court, but Saturday during a rally in Atlanta said we're going to get to the Supreme Court. So this has all got to move pretty quickly if anything's going to change. It's running out of time.
Right, but what about just the challenge? Can the legislature block certification at all, or at least block the electors?
I don't know. We'll have to see. It's not clear to me. It doesn't appear to be clear to anybody right now.
Mm-hmm. And another topic here. We're doing the round robin with you, Joe. So tell us what we know about the Associated Press and what they're looking at report cards.
Yeah, fascinating story reported today from the Associated Press about, as you know, report cards come out in December. This is sort of the mid-year for high school and elementary school students. And what they're finding is a horrendous number of students who are failing, thousands. And one particular school district in Oregon found out that like 8% of students have zero. Not even a grade. This is a function of students not turning in their assignments. They say it's very difficult for them to get a gauge on who's doing well and who's not, because it's so easy for them to turn off their videos. And I can tell you, for what it's worth, personally, as a dad of a high school student who has done very well, I've watched her struggle. And as an adjunct professor at the University of Maryland, teaching a Zoom class for the second semester, it's very difficult for them to engage. Sometimes it's with internet capacity. One of the problems a lot of people are seeing is with the people that don't have good internet is that they can't download their assignments. This is also a big issue. So the online learning continues to be a struggle, people trying to figure it out. And I think that the bad report cards that likely are going to come out across the country should be a moment for us to try to refigure this out.
And is there a correlation between states or districts that have opened up and allowed the students to come back, and are they getting better grade cards compared to students who are facing a shutdown?
Well, even the schools that are allowed to go more still aren't doing that well. It's across the country. They take a look at Oregon, they did Houston, they did Minnesota. So it's everywhere across the country that it appears as if the grades aren't doing well. It's just really an issue of trying to get the students back. It appears as if back in the classroom, at least in a more regular and consistent basis soon.
All right, Joe Weber, thank you for bringing us all these headlines.
Thank you.
And stay with us, folks. We're going to give you more coverage of the Trump rally in Georgia. Very good morning and welcome back here to Just the News. I'm Carrie Sheffield. Let's give you the latest on Rudy Giuliani. Now, the president's attorney was checked into the hospital after testing positive with the coronavirus. We send him all the best wishes on a speedy recovery. The Trump campaign put out a statement detailing the timeline of the diagnosis. They said that Mayor Giuliani tested negative twice immediately preceding his trip to Arizona, Michigan, and Georgia. The mayor did not experience any symptoms or test positive for COVID-19 until more than 48 hours after his return. No legislators in any state or members of the press are on the contact tracing list under CDC guidelines. They also said that other team members who have defined as having had close contact with Giuliani will be following their physician's directives and CDC guidelines on self-isolation and testing. And the president took to Twitter to give his condolences to Mayor Giuliani on his diagnosis. He tweeted out, "Rudy Giuliani, by far the greatest mayor in the history of New York City and who has been working tirelessly exposing the most corrupt election by far in the history of the USA, has tested positive for the China virus. Get better soon, Rudy. We will carry on." And then you also have the mayor himself putting out a statement and saying that he says, "Thank you to all of my friends and followers for all of the prayers and kind wishes. I'm getting great care and feeling good, recovering quickly and keeping up with everything." So, of course, we will keep you posted on anything we hear on the mayor's diagnosis. And in the meantime, I want to turn to the president and his rally in Georgia. He held a rally for the two Senate candidates, the Republicans who are really fighting tooth and nail to keep control of the Senate. This would be basically the last line of defense for the president and his legacy and preventing Democrats from dismantling everything that the president has implemented. Let's take some sound here from the president in Georgia.
You know, we won Georgia, just so you understand. And we won Florida, and we won a lot of places. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you very much. Thank you. No, we won a lot of places. We won Florida. We won Ohio. Big. We won them big. Remember, we were going to lose Florida, they said. We were 5 down in Florida. We won by a lot. We were way down in Ohio, and we won by a lot. I think they say that if you win Florida and if you win Ohio, in history, you've never lost an election. This has got to be our first time. But the truth is they were right. We've never lost an election. We're winning this election. And I will say we're fighting very hard for this state. When you look at all of the corruption and all of the problems having to do with this election, all I can do is campaign, and then I wait for the numbers. But when the numbers come out of ceilings and come out of leather bags, you start to say, what's going on?
We know that in Georgia, we've been reporting here at Just the News about in Georgia, they have 250 open election integrity cases. The State Bureau of Investigation is looking into this. Governor Brian Kemp has approved the request for help on Friday, providing extra resources as the Secretary of State Raffensperger's office is also dealing with 2 runoff elections slated for January 5th that are going to determine the control of the U.S. Senate. So this is a lot that's on the governor's plate and on the Secretary of State's plate there in Georgia. And you have the president down there really trying to rally the troops for Republicans. And he's got this interesting tension, the president does. And he noted this. He said, look, we can still fight and protest the election and the way it was run, but we can also make sure that we encourage you to go out and vote. He said you can walk and chew gum at the same time, basically. And this is the paradox that the president and all Republicans around the country find themselves in, is to say, look, we want to encourage democracy. We want to encourage people going out to vote and doing their civic participation. But at the same time, we want to make sure that people have faith and they trust this process. And it'll be really interesting to see if the president, if he ultimately is unsuccessful and Joe Biden is sworn in, what he would do next. And Donald Trump, it's been reported over the weekend, he's reportedly, if he is unable to challenge successfully the election results, it's been reported that he plans to have a a rally on Inauguration Day down in Florida, that he would take Air Force One and fly down for one last trip and there basically host another rally the troops vote and potentially kick off a 2024 election campaign. This would basically give him a perpetual status to be able to tour the country and continue to make his claim, saying that there was election fraud or irregularities, and would just give him this platform to go and continue to challenge. And it's really interesting because when you talk to a lot of Trump supporters, a lot of them, part of why they're so adamant about continuing this process to challenge, they say that it's, if you look at, they're used to the last 4 or 5 years of basically seeing what's being reported by the mainstream media and then knowing that the opposite actually ends up becoming the truth. So, for example, when it comes to Russian collusion, over and over we heard it from the mainstream media that this was something that was indisputable. You had Adam Schiff going all over the media and claiming that he had airtight proof that the president was colluding with Russia. And then fast forward, we see the Mueller report, and it's like the media wants us to forget and have amnesia that they were saying things for years that turned out to not be true. Same thing we saw with Michael Flynn. Our founder here at Just the News, John Solomon, has done excellent reporting to show how Michael Flynn, everything that the mainstream media said about Michael Flynn, the exact opposite was true. The exact opposite was true of the Obama administration and their claims. So that's why a lot of folks are taking everything they see from this election with a grain of salt, and we are going to be covering it till the very end here at Just the News. Stick with us, folks. We've got Kaya Jones, an actress, producer, and Grammy Award-winning vocalist, coming up next. morning and welcome back to Just the News AM. I'm Carrie Sheffield and glad you're with us. Joining me is Kaya Jones. She's an actress, producer, Grammy-winning vocalist, and host of Messages with Kaya on Life Network, Tuesdays at 3 p.m. Good morning, Kaya.
Hi, good morning, Carrie. Thank you for having me.
Right, the Renaissance woman. So I want to put up a tweet here just first to let our viewers know about a project that you're involved with Charity Buzz.
Yes.
And Charity Buzz has an auction, and it's basically allowing people to have a Zoom with you. And It's being auctioned off, the Zoom audience with Kaya Jones, for a charity called the Wishwall Foundation. So tell us, what is the Wishwall Foundation?
Well, Simonetta Lean, who I'm like the biggest fan of now, she had me on her show. And so this is actually her foundation. She's done multiple things with different people, and they help everything from like food to getting people acclimated back into workforce. She's done a ton of different things. So it's really her foundation and then what she chooses to do, especially for this one. So I'm not sure what this one is going to be streamlined at, but I said I want to help however I can help.
Well, and there are lots of ways, certainly, especially during the holiday season and with COVID, where I'm sure the need is very great. So I feel lucky because we're getting to have a conversation with you on our network, and maybe we'll bid on you.
Oh, that would be awesome. You're a rock star, Carrie. I'm not surprised you're where you are. You've always been a rock star.
Oh, Kaya, that's sweet.
It's true.
So, Kaya, tell us, because you were on the president's diversity coalition, what do you think is the next step for the president? Because we've been following very closely, reporting very closely here at Just the News, every single legal challenge, all of the legislative hearings. We've been, front and center about it. But it looks like the momentum, there is a very strong chance the president will not be able to keep the White House. What would be the next step for the president?
Well, I think the first step before we get ahead of ourselves is making sure we have fair elections. And that doesn't matter what side you sit on. I think this is an American issue. We have to have fair elections. We're not another country. We're the United States of America. And I think that's what we're seeing right now is a lot of the American people don't feel that they saw a fair election. Once this is all proven, then we can go from there. But in the meantime, I'm like honing in on prayer. I feel like we have a heart problem in our country, not a party problem. And if we started to really hone in on God and do the right thing, it would be limitless what we could do as a nation.
And you have a very unique background because you were a pop star. You were involved with folks who were not that devout, let's just put it mildly, and really caught up in sort of the R&B fast lane. A lot of folks who are involved in things like drugs and promoting lifestyles that are not consistent with your lifestyle now, and you are a devout Christian. How did that conversion process happen for you, and what's it been like as you've completely just totally rechanged your life? Yeah,
well, I mean, you met me, I had pink hair, right?
Right.
I wasn't exactly like how I am now, and I just want to be a living testimony to the Lord and letting him in my life. And it started with me being really vocal about my president, right? That's how it started. And then speaking about the Second Amendment, speaking about, religious freedoms, and speaking about, sanctity of life. And it was all of those little moments because I had to initially, when he, interjected himself into my life, it was on the political side. And then he got me so kind of elated to talk that by the time now I'm ready to talk about him, I'm like running versus being nervous about it. So it's been a journey. It's not overnight, but I hope people can see my change and follow, my transformation with God. And, hopefully we can all do this together because we do have a heart problem globally. It's not just in the United States. We really need to tap into what's wrong with us. Why are we not being more human and being more good to one another and helping our community in any which way that we can?
And I want to talk about the vaccine because you put out a tweet. Yeah. You said, I'm not taking the vaccine. I don't trust anything you've said. You've lied to us and stole the election from our president. You aren't God, but he sees you, and you better believe you're in hot water. Your goose is about to get cooked. And I assume you're talking to Joe Biden in this, but I want to ask you, though, because the president... I wasn't. Oh, you weren't? Who are you talking to in this case?
I'm talking to anyone that is not doing things the right way. And I think a lot of Americans, though they are interested in finding out about the vaccine, they have to know why and really hone in, because there's so many conflicting arguments. And if we can understand, hey, this is why, this is what's in it, not to say, because as you can see, there are people so far on one spectrum, they're like, I don't want to take the vaccine because it's from Trump. And then on the other spectrum, they're like, well, I've heard there's all this stuff in it. So, hey, how do we talk about something that's really important, which is health? It should be everyone's issue, not a right or a left. And from there, we can go from there. But as of right now, I feel that there are preventative measures I can take with wearing a mask, social distancing, sanitizing my hands, washing my hands, disinfecting, and also vitamin intake and keeping myself healthy. So that's the form I'm taking as of right now. And I think we should all take preventative measures and then go from there. So that's why I posted that tweet. But it wasn't directed toward Biden necessarily. It was directed toward anyone right now not doing the right thing.
Mm-hmm. And but Operation Warp Speed was developed by President Trump, and you're a Trump supporter. So what's your response to someone who would say, well, this is, Kayleigh McEnany called it the Trump vaccine last week?
I love Kayleigh, and we can all have our opinion on this. I support her. I do support this administration. And actually, one of the members of Warp Speed was on CNBC this morning, and he even explained this is not going to be something that's forced anyone. You can have a choice, and I think every American should have that choice. That's what makes America a free country, not a socialized one, not a communistic one that's a free nation. So that's just how I feel.
All right, Kai Jones, we appreciate you joining us this morning.
Thank you.
And make sure to check her show, Kaya, on the Life Network. She's the host of Messages with Kaya, Tuesdays at 3 p.m. Stay with us, folks. We'll be right back. there. Good morning and welcome back to Just the News AM. I'm Carrie Sheffield and glad you've been here on the ride with us here today. So it's December 7th. And in case you forgot, today is Pearl Harbor Remembrance Day, December 7th, 1941, when the United States was attacked by Japan. And this was the trigger point that brought the United States into World War II and ultimately triumphant over Japan and also over the Nazis. The president put out a statement for Pearl Harbor Remembrance Day, and he said, "We recall the phrase, 'Remember Pearl Harbor,' which stirred the fighting spirit within the hearts of the more than 16 million Americans who courageously served in World War II. Over 400,000 gave their lives in the global conflict that began for our nation on that fateful Sunday morning. Today, we memorialize all those lost on December 7th, 1941, declare once again that our nation will never forget these valiant heroes, and resolve as firmly as ever that their memory and spirit will survive for as long as our nation endures." And Congress passed a public law, amended, and to designate each year December 7th as National Pearl Harbor Remembrance Day. And so the president signed this, and he encouraged all Americans to observe the solemn day of remembrance and to honor our military, past and present, with appropriate ceremonies and activities. He said he urges all federal agencies and interested organizations, groups, and individuals to fly the flag of the United States at half-staff in honor of those Americans, patriots who died. So we salute all those who gave their lives and all those who afterwards signed up to serve our country today on Pearl Harbor Day. Well, that does it for us, folks. Stay here for War Room. It's coming up next.